Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. This is your host, Howard Fox. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration and enjoyment of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Ryan McMahon. Ryan is the founder of Elite Custom Adventures. Ryan and his team at Elite Custom Adventures here in Las Vegas, by the way, specialize in creating experiences for their clients that they'll remember for a lifetime. Their adventures include Las Vegas day trips and national park experiences, and the team works with individuals, corporate, and international clients. Ryan, it is a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Thank you so much.
Howard, happy to be here, and thank you for having me on. Look forward to our chat.
Fantastic. And I'm really appreciative, and I'll give him a shout out to Ches Chezik, who's the executive director of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. After Ches had been sharing all these adventures he was having here in the Las Vegas area, he goes, Howard, you got to meet this guy. So Ryan, before we kind of dive into Elite Custom Adventures, I wonder if you could share with our audience a little bit about your background and how'd you get into this business of adventures and experiences for people just like me who need to be outside rather than sitting at a desk.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say I listened to your podcast last week with Alex Sills, and he had mentioned that he was one that didn't grow up doing these type of things. And similarly, I'm in that same boat. I don't think you have to have been camping since you were, 6 years old to get out and enjoy it. In my early 20s, I broke up with a girlfriend. And during that time, I put on a few pounds and decided to pick back up running, which was something I'd done when I was younger. And I'm kind of a go big or go home person. So I signed up for a marathon as the big goal. And completed it and really enjoyed it. And I got into the St. George Marathon in Utah after about a year and a half of doing this. And I decided it's a part of the country I hadn't been to, and I'm going to take 2 weeks and spend some time out there. And I did the marathon, completed it. It was rough with the elevation, but over the course of the next 2 weeks, just in a car and really staying at hotels, glamping, but not really the outdoorsy stuff. I visited the Grand Canyon and the Big Five through Utah: Arches, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Bryce, and Zion. And I added in Wilson Arch and Monument Valley and all that kind of stuff. And it was just an absolutely incredible trip. I remember driving down the road to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. They do a great job of kind of keeping it hidden with the forest until you're literally sitting at the edge of it there. And I mean, it's breathtaking when you first see that. And for me, it was really my first experience spending some time in the national parks, particularly out west. And it was something that I think at that moment I got very hooked and decided that this is what I wanted to do. But at the time I had the iPhone and I was clicking away and taking pictures and whatnot. When I got back, I remembered these incredible views, and I just didn't feel like what I was capturing on the iPhone was reflecting what I was seeing in that moment. And that's when I looked into getting my first interchangeable lens camera. And that started a decade of a deep, dark hole of going into cameras and lenses and learning about photography and getting to know our national parks across this country.
I love that. And by the way, I can appreciate the deep, dark hole. And a question that comes to mind as you were mentioning about the iPhone and taking pictures, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is you go out to these wonderful places. And I have to admit, I've been in Vegas for now, it's going on 2 years. I've been to Capitol Reef. I haven't been to the other big four, which I need to do. I think you might be helping me take care of that. But that's a whole other conversation. As I warned you before, I'm a very opportunistic podcaster. When you are out at these beautiful locations and everybody has their smartphone in their hand, their iPad in their hand, the camera, are you you're taking the picture, they're taking pictures. Do you feel folks are really appreciating where they're at and what they're seeing because they're so focused on capturing the picture?
That's a great question. And it's something that I've struggled with myself. I feel like a lot of times I spend my trips behind the lens of the camera because I really do enjoy that. But I have to consciously tell myself sometimes that you need to be in the moment as well and take this in and enjoy it. On the flip side, though, I will say when I go on a trip for a week or two and hit a number of parks, it's almost just as fun for me when I get home to go back through the photos, do the editing, and kind of relive some of those moments as it is in the moment itself. So I think it's a combination. If you spend your entire time behind the camera and don't just take a minute to take in that sunrise or that sunset or look at the stars and think about life, I do think you're missing part of the trip. But part of what photography can do can help you capture and relive those memories for years to come, which is really a big reason I started Elite Custom Adventures, which I'm sure we'll get into as we talk here. But it's a bit of a combination. I think there's a great opportunity to capture those moments, but also stay in the moment too. Don't just spend it behind the viewfinder the whole time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. When you began to explore the parks as a result of taking part in the St. George Marathon.
Yep.
I couldn't bring the words marathon out of my mouth because I have no idea what those are. I've never run one. I did live on the last mile of the Chicago Marathon. I got that. When you began to explore, had you been prepared for the intricacies of what equipment you needed to not only go on the adventure that you were taking, but also to be safe? Or did you go to the local REI, Dick's Sporting Goods, and just pick up stuff because it looked good? The salesperson said, oh, you should buy this. Or did you do some research beforehand to get ready for these adventures?
No, you're absolutely right. I think on that first trip that I did, it was very much driving in a car, staying in hotels and pre-planned places. Over the years after that first trip, I would save up all my PTO and go on a 2-week trip to a section of the country and try to visit 5 or 6 national parks over that trip. And through that, I wanted to be able to be more flexible. And if I want to stay here 3 days, that's great. If I want to move on, keep moving. And with that, you need to have the gear to be able to do those type of things in different climates and different environments. I think there was a combination. I do love some REI. I think they do a great job with having a diverse array of products, but also the return policy is phenomenal if something doesn't work out. One of the things I got early on was the book Mountaineering: Spirit of the Hills. And that book will take you from everything about how to step properly all the way up to ice climbing in an alpine setting. And you might not use every element of it, but it talks about the type of gear that you need to remain safe out there. There's a huge diversity from the desert parts of the Southwest all the way going up to the Sierras, things along those lines. And you need to have different gear as you go. So I'm one that tries to do my best to be prepared going into a situation. But there's also an element of you don't know what you don't know. And when we go on these trips, I always try to come back and evaluate what worked well, what didn't work well, what could I have done differently. A decade into this, I can say I've done stupid stuff out there and not been as prepared as I could have been in certain situations. But you learn from those type of things and try not to make the same mistakes twice. And the gear's fun. I probably spent way more money on gear than I need to, and got some things that might be frivolous that I don't use that much, but you develop a nice collection of things, and depending on the situation, try to put together the best assortment for each individual trip.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm curious, Mountaineering: Spirit of the Hills, is that book still one available, and is it still timely for our needs today?
And I apologize, it's Mountaineering: Freedom of the Hills. And
Freedom of the Hills.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe it is still available, and I
Okay.
think it's on its 10th edition. They
Okay.
continue to update it with best practices, but
Okay.
it is I mean, I think it's like 600 pages, something along those lines, and they'll give you everything from the basics to the super advanced, but really great book.
I love it. So I will definitely put a backlink to the book on our show notes. As we go through this interview today, you already know I'm an opportunistic guy, but as we start to collect anecdotes, books, quotes, articles, we'll provide those backlinks on the show notes. So how did Elite Custom Adventures come about?
Absolutely. So over the course of the last decade or so, I worked in behavioral health care. And like I mentioned, I would save up all of my PTO and for a week or two chunks, go to a section of the country and do the car camping thing, hit different national parks for a couple of days at a time. It became a real passion of mine. In late 2019, I was wrapping up an MBA program and secured a healthcare position in Las Vegas, moved across the country to a place where I didn't know anybody. And within
I think
3
I've done
months,
that.
yeah, no, absolutely. But timing wise, you might have seen this coming late 2019. 3 months later, we were dealing with the coronavirus, and I was let go from my position and in a new part of the country where the unemployment rate was going through the roof. Companies were really nervous to hire because of the uncertainty going on. And I decided rather than compete with a giant pool of people looking for jobs right now, what better time to try to start my own business doing something that I'm passionate about. And I thought back to that first trip to the Grand Canyon that I'd mentioned earlier, when you turn the corner and you see the canyon. I mean, it really takes your breath away. And it's something that I think every American, every person should have the opportunity to see at some point. And I mentioned I got an MBA. I've been to business school, and I understand that you need to have a unique product. And there's a lot of companies that take people out to the national parks. I didn't want to just be another company. So what I thought to do, and I've yet to find anybody, at least in the area, that offers the same type of services, is do private custom national park tours and pair that with professional photography and videography. Doing this, you'd ask the question about, do you feel like you're missing part of it by taking the pictures the whole time? Well, yeah, there's an element to that. And by coming along as not just a guide, but a photographer, it would allow the guests to remain engaged in the moment, but still have the moment captured professionally for them. And that was kind of my value add that I thought would make us stand out from the competition. And built this during the pandemic. Yes, it was a absolutely terrible time to start a travel business, but the goal was to get our foundation set, make the connections that we needed to make, build the web page, refine the business plan in the process. And as travel started back again, be uniquely positioned to offer a premium service that's really not out there for people that are interested in something along those lines.
Very good. I appreciate your transition or transformation from having the quote unquote job to really pursuing something that you were passionate about, which is more than, say, in a coaching term I would use with folks, it would be a side hustle. Just do it for a couple hours a week, but you actually transform from being the healthcare professional into now the founder of this company, ECA. And Alec, very similar in his adventure. Now his focus is a little different than yours, more on the writing aspect. And then there's Travis Puglisi, who's the founder of Wandering Mojave Hiking Services. He specializes on experiences out in Joshua Tree. And I really love the fact that guys like you, the women as well, who realize I have this passion, and COVID actually provided an opportunity for many of us, even myself. I mean, I have moved out here because it was a job opportunity, but with COVID and just getting out here, I was able to begin to explore the great outdoors, which is how we actually came about to create the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. So I love the fact there's this transformation in your life, and that you've now successfully started at ECA. As you began to develop the programs, I mentioned in our introduction, Las Vegas day trips, the national parks. How are you designing these trips for your customers so it is that unique experience that they're going to remember for a lifetime?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. When I first started the business, my idea was to replicate what I talked about, going on like a week or 2 week trip and hitting 5 or 6 different national parks. And as I got into it, there were a few things I found out. First off, you need to have commercial use authorizations to work in the different parks. So if you wanted to have trips going to the Pacific Northwest, you needed to have a use authorization for Olympic and Rainier and North Cascades. And I mean, each of these comes with a 30-page application and multiple hundreds of dollars of application fees. So from a logistical standpoint, it didn't necessarily, as much as I loved the idea, it didn't make as much sense for a small startup business. Additionally, as I continued to get feedback from potential guests and people who were very much in my target market, a lot of them told me, look, Ryan, I love the idea, but I'm a busy professional. I don't always have 2 spare weeks to go spend in a nice RV with my family traveling the country. To me, the idea of going on a 1 or 2 day trip when I'm in Las Vegas to begin with makes a lot more sense for my time and my schedule than this monstrous trip to the Canadian Rockies or, wherever it might be. So I had to pivot myself and decided to focus on 1 and 2 day trips. We're willing to do the longer ones for sure as well. But Death Valley and Zion have been our most popular sites. It's a 2.5 hour drive from Las Vegas. We also have permits to the Grand Canyon, to Great Basin, and to Joshua Tree. And really try to work with guests that we want to get feedback from the guests as we go, particularly through those initial trips. Learned a lot. We did a couple just test runs with friends and family and folk that have Instagram influence in the Las Vegas area, and got a lot of great feedback about what works, what doesn't, things that we can add to make it a really premium experience. And then to your point about customizing the trip, one of the things that comes along this is we do a pre-trip Zoom preparation session with each group. And during that, we talk about their skill level, their goals for the trip, their outdoor experience, food preferences, health conditions, allergies, things along those lines. And with each trip, we craft a custom itinerary based on what the group wants to get out of it. I think I've shared with you off mic before. I've taken 20-year-olds scrambling up ridges and hiking into the Grand Canyon, but I've also taken an 88-year-old woman in a wheelchair. Her daughter wanted to do the trip out to Death Valley to see the Milky Way. And to me, that's really one of the benefits. You're not on a big tour bus with 7 other families. This is your trip. And going into it, we can craft it and prepare you to get exactly what you want out of it. And if during the trip we need to make a pivot or change anything, we can do that because it is your specific trip. So basically, we try to learn from our guests to continue to refine the process. But with each group, we want to really listen to them as we're crafting the trip itself to make it exactly what they want it to be.
Fantastic. I'm curious. You just mentioned this 80-year-old woman in the wheelchair. Her daughter wanted to take the trip, and you did that with them. And Death Valley, I love Death Valley. In fact, I just was reading about this crater in Death Valley I need to go out to now.
Yeah, Yuba.
Yeah. As a former behavioral healthcare practitioner, what is the psyche of the guests that are coming to you wanting to go out on this adventure? And I mean this from a perspective, I want to take my kids, the family on a 2-day excursion. I get that. What else are you hearing from them about, like every time you mention the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, I'm like, I have got to get out there. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been to Capitol Reef. I need to get out to Great Basin, but I need to go see a sequoia. Okay. I've never
Yep.
seen a sequoia. I mean, that's the equivalent of watching whales
Yeah.
going from out on the coast in the Pacific. What are the experiences they're sharing with you that they want to have coming out of this investment in this adventure?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is one thing I've found through this is that everyone's definition of pushing their limits and adventure is a little bit different. There's, paths that I would never think twice walking down. They're 3-4 foot wide. Yeah, there's a little fall off to the side, but the odds of falling, not like I wouldn't think twice about this. But I'll take some people out there and we start to go and they say, Ryan, this is a little too much for me. I don't feel great with this. So you have to gauge out each guest comfort level. And that's a big reason we have chats beforehand. But what's really nice is doing a trip like this, you almost always find that guests are willing to push themselves a little bit with an experienced guide with them. So if your level is a 2, you might be comfortable doing a 3 or a 4 while you're out there and do more than you ever thought you could. If your level is a 7, you might be able to do an 8 or a 9 while you're out there, So I think a lot of times people that we scramble up some rocks to a beautiful ridge overlooking Zabriskie Point in Death Valley, or hike up the side of the Ubehebe crater you just mentioned there in the north part of the park. Those are things that if they were on their own, they might not feel comfortable doing. But with myself, with one of our guides, they do. And I think they get a real sense of pride knowing that they were able to push that. I'll say we travel with a Garmin InReach Mini. It's a satellite link device. I've never had to use it on the trip, but God forbid should something happen, we do have that ability to get service and response. And I'm a certified wilderness first responder. And letting the guests know that on the front end, we have a medical bag with us we have a stethoscope in it, if that tells you how detailed the bag is. And it's not come up that we've had to use this, but we want the guests to feel safe and comfortable really exploring the park and do more than they ever really could have. In regards to a specific experience that is something that I think you can term as life-changing, probably half of the trips we've done, and this was not something I expected coming in, but we just learn as we go, have been to view the dark skies in Death Valley. Death Valley and Great Basin are 2 national parks that are international dark sky sites. And it is just an incredible experience to go out there and to be able to see the dark sky in the Milky Way. And if you grew up in the Northeast or around a major city or the South, it's almost impossible to see the night sky of this quality out there. So to bring the guests out and to be able to see the Milky Way with your bare eye and really take that in and see tens of thousands of stars in the sky is something that I think everyone should experience. And then we're able to capture it with astrophotography for the guests, where not only are they enjoying it, but they're going to get to walk away with some really phenomenal pictures of themselves. We use a flash to capture the guests' details. I really like the silhouette shots of the guests with the Milky Way in the background. And a lot of times the guests themselves are hobbyist photographers. So we encourage them to bring out their cameras. We'll bring a tripod for them, the whole shebang, and really teach them how to do that night sky astrophotography and get some really great shots of their own. So, Grand Canyon overlook, incredible. Zion, seeing the canyon fill with the sunrise. There's so many incredible national park experiences, but I think the most popular one we've had has definitely been the dark skies and going out at night, seeing the Milky Way over Death Valley.
I love it. And as a dark sky photographer, I can totally appreciate that comment. And for our listeners, as I am chatting with Ryan, his background is dark sky. There's the silhouette I see. That's either a shooting star or an airplane, but it's a wonderful shot. And here's another opportunistic ask, Ryan, is as already on our show notes, we also include some photographs. So I would love some examples you could share with us so we could put up in our show notes, and including one of your favorite dark sky shots as well. So
absolutely. We'll make sure that's available.
Fantastic. Further to the the mindset of your clients who are wanting to get out and have this experience? After they have the experience, what are they saying to you?
I think that we've had a number of rebookings of guests who went out on this experience. And I think that's the biggest compliment to me, is that they enjoyed it enough that they're willing to do it again and try a different site. That 88-year-old woman, she is 89 now and will be going to Zion and Bryce here in a couple months. They're coming back with me. The reviews will typically I try to seek feedback from them, as well as ask them to, post on TripAdvisor, Google, things along those lines, is that it's such a unique experience and something that they don't think they'd have necessarily been able to do on their own. Our goal is to allow them to remain engaged in the moment and not have to worry about all the details. We take care of the transportation, the hiking gear, the safety equipment, all the food, snacks, drinks, things along those lines. And I think the guests really appreciate that they're able to show up with the proper clothing, proper footwear, and their own medications. And by and large, we take care of absolutely everything else outside of it. One of the things they really speak to is the uniqueness of the experiences. I mean, we have a lot of guests that are coming to Las Vegas from other locations. And if you've not spent time in the Southwest, in the Mojave Desert, Death Valley, Zion, things along those lines, it's otherworldly. And I think they're very appreciative that they are able to live those experiences and feel very comfortable doing it. And not just that, but, part of the reason this is a premium experience is when I go out with the guests for a day, I generally will take close to 2,000 shots of them. And it takes some time to go through those photos and narrow it down to the best 50 or 60, and then edit those and, touch them up and make sure everything looks pristine. So kind of like I mentioned, enjoying on my own trips, going back through the photos afterwards. Usually takes me about 4 or 5 days. We send the guests a follow-up email and a Google Drive link to all their photos, and they get to go back through them and almost relive that experience. So I think that's a really special thing for them on the back end as well.
Very good. Very good. Now, as long as ECA has been around, and I would imagine when you first started, it was just you, but you've mentioned a couple times the team.
Yeah.
Talk more about the team, because to create these kinds of adventures, it has to be more than just you. And I think that's
I'll
important.
say by and large, I've done the vast majority of our initial trips. We're starting to get to a point where we do have overlapping bookings and some extended bookings in multiple parts of the country. And I have a very talented individual that I work with out here, Jess, who is an excellent photographer, incredibly experienced in the national parks, and has helped me on some of these trips before. Also have another partner, Dominique, who is able to do a lot of the day trips out of the Las Vegas area. And an incredibly talented individual, Cameron, who lives just outside of Yosemite in the Mariposa area, who's able to help me out if guests are interested in doing something in the Sierras up that way as well. So by and large, as a small business, I have tried to do the trips that I am able to do. But as we grow, I think it's incredibly important that we attract people who are not just great photographers or great outdoors people, but really a combination of the two, and make sure that they're able to have great interactions with our guests and work to have that mindset where they're really there to create the incredible experience. And there's so many trips that we've been able to put together so far that I wouldn't be able to do without the additional help, and just really appreciative of their willingness to be a part of this.
Very nice. Very nice. As I was reviewing the website in preparation for the show, I came across the ECA National Park Scholarship. Talk to us more about that.
Well, I grew up with a single mom with 4 kids. I'm the oldest of 4. And the reality is Elite Custom Adventures is offering a premium experience. This is not cheap. We take care of absolutely everything: nice meals, lodging, transportation, the photography services. And I recognized early on that this is something that my own family would not have been able to afford growing up. And I very much believe that the national park should be able to be experienced by everyone. So something we wanted to, from the time I was making the business plan, be able to offer was to do one of these trips with a group that wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. And the criteria, we look for someone that's part of an underserved population. And that's not necessarily the color of your skin or anything like that, but experience, possibly having a parent in the military or incarcerated or something along those lines. And someone who's not been able to experience the national parks before. All of our tax dollars go to supporting these parks. And I really believe everybody should be able to live those experiences. So first one, I was able to take a single mom and her two kids out to Zion National Park and spend the day out there. And it was a really tremendous experience to be able to see the kids have those special moments. Now, I'm from the South. I don't think I mentioned I'm from Nashville originally. And we have deer everywhere. Deer are just, to me, the worst. Like, it's what you want to avoid hitting with your car when you're driving out there. But these kids grew up in a major city in the Southwest and they'd never seen a deer before. And when we got out to Zion and they saw a fawn standing there in the middle of the Virgin River, they were losing their mind. And to be able to create that experience for them where they might not have been able to do something like that otherwise, and to be able to capture those memories for mom too. The kids are going to get older. They're not going to stay that same age before. They'll grow up and go off to college and move to their own city. So to not only create the memories, but be able to capture it is something that I think is important to be able to offer to a broad range of groups, not just people who are privileged enough to be in a higher economic class. So that's something that's important to us and that we want to make a part of what we do.
Fantastic. As you look back on your career, and you're quite a bit younger than I am, but I think it's still possible to look back on your career. What have you learned about yourself now that you have gone from, well, in some ways, you are continuing to help others. You did that in your previous career as a behavioral health professional. You're doing it again by helping to create these experiences. But also, what have you learned about yourself in terms of your mindfulness, perhaps also a little bit about the business aspect? And how is it informing, what would you say to your younger self about what you're doing today?
It's interesting you bring that up. Yes, you're right. I want to continue to do good for others. I think that's something that's always been part of who I am. And I think it was hard to step away from the behavioral health and jump into what I'm doing here. But I have been able to see over the last couple of years that we are able to impact people's lives by creating the experiences we do. The thing that really jumped out to me personally that surprised me was the artistic side of things. Growing up, I've always been very left-brained, very math, Excel spreadsheet oriented. And if you'd have told me I'd be an artist or creative of any type, I would have scoffed at you growing up. And even when I was getting into the photography initially, it was not because I saw myself as an artist. It was just because I wanted to capture these beautiful landscapes. But as you go into it, one thing I really enjoy is I can feel my brain working differently when I'm taking pictures, framing it, using the different depth of field to be able to point the viewer's eyes to where you're looking for, finding great leading lines, things along those lines, no pun intended, is to do something that I never really thought I'd been doing. And the reality, even though I'm running a business, it's a business based on creating experiences logistically, but capturing them artistically. And I never in a million years would have thought I don't even like calling myself an artist. That it sounds almost kind of hokey to me, but the reality is I am in a creative field and I am a creative in capturing these images. So it's something I guess I've quote unquote come to terms with over the years, and probably looking back would have told myself not to be so apprehensive to using that right side of the brain as well and embrace the creative side of things. Just because you can't draw or paint or things along those, or play an instrument doesn't mean you're not creative. So embrace that and let it be part of your life rather than just focusing on what you're good at when it's making an Excel formula or having things fit together like Tetris blocks, and allow yourself to be creative and let that be a part of your life also.
Very good. As a fellow left brainer, I totally appreciate that. And coming out here, just being able to get out and explore and capture and be in them, and it's wonderful, even for us left brainers.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners? Perhaps there's a quote, maybe another book, an article you've read, something that you'd like to leave with them about this experience of exploring the great outdoors, whether obviously taking advantage of Elite Custom Adventures, but anything else that you'd like to share with them?
Yeah. Coming into this, I had to decide if I wanted to go all in on the business or straddle the fence, things along those lines. And I'm a huge podcast fan. I'm glad that I was able to be a part of this. And one I listen to pretty regularly is WTF with Mark Maron. He interviews all kinds of comedians and cultural figures and things along those lines. And one thing that stood out to me for so many of those was how many people decided to go all in. They didn't straddle the fence. They didn't keep the side job. They made the leap to move to a Chicago or a New York or an LA or something along those lines. And it's scary to leap all in, but sometimes you got to do it. And the quote that jumps out to me is one that I've been a fan of since high school. I believe it was attributed to Einstein, and it's great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. And when you want to pursue spending time in the outdoors and doing multi-night section hikes, or maybe going and hiking the Appalachian Trail, or starting a travel business during a pandemic, a lot of people will tell you you're crazy, or that's not a great idea, or maybe you should have a backup plan, or things along those lines. But I think a lot of times that people who have that drive and want to achieve, sometimes you got to make the leap and don't be afraid of it. And you and I were talking a little bit about the man in the ring at the beginning before we started recording here. And it's a phenomenal quote about trying. And even if you fail, at least you made the effort rather than just sitting on the sidelines and being a critic. And to me, I think that's a big part of life. There was no guarantee when I started a travel business at the beginning of a global pandemic that this would be a success. And who knows, we could have 6 more variants that shut down travel, and it's still uncertain at this point. But I'm incredibly proud of making the effort and taking the leap and being able to create these experiences for people. And if someone today is on the fence about making that leap in their life, I'd encourage them to do it and have those experiences. And success or not, you'll grow from it and learn, and it'll be something you'll be able to apply to different areas of the rest of your life.
Very good. That's wonderful insight to go. I appreciate that. Ryan, before we head out, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and the work of Elite Custom Adventures, where's the best places for them to go?
Absolutely. Our website is elitecustomadventures.com. On there, you can see some of the videos from our trips, the photos we're able to capture, and what we try to turn these experiences into for our guests. On social media, we focus on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find us in any of those 3. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to me at ryanm@elitecustomadventures.com with any questions, thoughts, concerns, things along those lines.
Very good. Well, we will definitely provide the backlinks to the website and to the social sites, as well as your email. Ryan, it has been a pleasure to go a little deeper than our initial conversation and really kind of explore your background and what led you to create Elite Custom Adventures. And really this whole idea of creating experiences is just, it's wonderful, because we want to, that's how we give back. I mean, this podcast is an experience, and it's a great way to kind of use our talents that maybe we didn't have 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but we have them today and we're using them. And hopefully the people who are on the receiving end will enjoy it as well. So thank you again for spending part of your Monday with us.
Thanks for having me, Howard.
All right. Well, listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final conversation. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I live in Vegas. I'm going to be Ryan's new best friend, but we didn't get into the coffee questions. Perhaps that's another conversation because I'm a big coffee and sunrise kind of guy. I hope you took away from this that there's an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone. And if you have this desire to explore, Ryan, companies like Elite Custom Adventures and their ability to create these experiences that you literally are going to remember for a lifetime are there and available to you. And so we definitely hope you enjoyed today's episode, are curious, and will want to learn more about this company. And we're going to provide the website link to elitecustomadventures.com, as well as to the social sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Share it with your friends. Leave comments, like us, whatever. But this is what makes the Outdoor Adventure Series so exciting, is we get folks like Ryan sharing their stories with us about the work that they're doing and how they're living their best lives as well. If you enjoyed today's podcast, you can visit us for some more episodes on the outdooradventureseries.com website. We are also on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and we're on all the major podcasting platforms: Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Audible, and the secondary podcasting directories. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whenever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, your family, do good in the community, make a difference, and we hope to see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Thank you so much.